Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next video, and what this is going to be is basically a Avatar year in review for 2012. I'm recording this on the 1st of January. I planned to record it yesterday, but New Year's Eve was just a bit busy with stuff like that. My grandparents came over and stuff like that. So I'm recording it now, and yeah, what I'm basically this video is going to be it's just I'm going to talk about the positives, the negatives, and just other stuff, I suppose, all from 2012 in terms of Avatar and how was this year for Avatar stuff. We saw, it was a busy year for Avatar, and definitely better than 2011. So, in case you're wondering kind of where I am as opposed to my usual videos, I recorded last video and this video in this room, which is basically the sitting living room of the house, and if you're wondering what all that stuff is behind me, that's basically my sister's kind of stuff. She just keeps it here for some reason. Yeah, so that's where I am, and this video anyway, I'll start with general thoughts on 2012 as a year of Avatar stuff. This overall I think was a very good year. It was definitely the best year we've had in a while for Avatar, since 2008 pretty much, because we got new Avatar content with Korra, and also comics and stuff like that. So there's that media that came out that's really good and stuff like that. This year, I think compared to like what next year, I think the years go forward are going to be, this year has a lot of potential for Avatar the franchise in that it started a lot of new things. That said, there are also some negatives from the year in terms of stuff with fandom, and also I suppose in terms of the way Nick and maybe some of the people working on the show handled spreading news out about it and stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to talk about here, and I'm basically going to separate it into a positive section and a negative section. I'm going to start off with the positives though, and I suppose I'll begin with, I think Korra obviously is the big talking point about 2012. We've been waiting for this show since it was announced in 2010 and stuff like that. So it was a big moment, I suppose, for the Avatar fandom in the build-up to this, at the very start of 2012, and then when we actually got the show in kind of April, we got a, I think, preview at the end of March. So it was a big moment for the fandom, finally getting to see more Avatar on TV again, more episodes of Avatar, and that was huge for the fandom. Not since 2008 have we had that, so it was really great, and just to see the fandom that positive again as well was great. The site Avatar The Last Airbender Online was so active in those lead up months and then during the show and stuff like that. And you know, as far as Korra itself goes, I thought the book 1 Air, its 12 episodes, were overall very good, showed a lot of potential for Korra as a show. I think the way the fans are treating it, I suppose, is a bit of a negative, in that once it ended, it seemed like the focus became less on how good the show was, but more focused on what the negatives were from it, and really bashing it compared to Avatar The Last Airbender, when really they're very different shows in terms of their formats, in terms of the amount of episodes in each season and stuff like that. And obviously Avatar The Last Airbender is a completed show. Korra's had less than a quarter of its episodes, so it's not that fair of a comparison. And even then, if you just compare book 1 to book 1, I think Korra has a better book 1 than Avatar The Last Airbender. I think I just have to say that. Avatar gets really good in book 2 and 3. While Korra, I think, had the plot, had the story, had the characters, it had that nice balance. While it didn't maybe have enough of everything, there's still 3 seasons to kind of explore that. That's kind of my take on everything. Yes, I was a bit disappointed with some of the lack of explanation in the ending, but I think I can take enough out of like what we did see based on like stuff like Aang's advice, and then just really in depth looking at the characters, that it doesn't bother me too much. So I think, you know, overall most fans are very positive about Korra, a lot of potential. I think everyone says that, but the thing is that there's some fans, some very vocal fans out there who are focusing just on the negatives, and that's a bit kind of like really moving a lot of people to thinking that way, instead of just thinking that, like, hey, we got basically 11 and a half episodes that were amazing. I was only a little bit at the end, I was disappointed. But overall, Korra was good. Just because, you know, this video is visual stuff, not just audio. Since there is no Korra merchandise, which I'll talk about more negative later, I'll just use this coronation poster basically to represent Korra in this video. So Korra was a huge positive for me. A little positive for me during the year, just me personally, I suppose anyone else in who won coronation stuff, was getting a poster like this. This one obviously signed by Mike O'Brien, that was pretty cool, and great art by Josh Middleton. So that was a huge positive from the year. Korra, definitely. Next, move on to comics, and obviously I can definitely represent those. Part 1, The Promise Part 1, Promise Part 2, and The Promise Part 3. All together make up the Promise series. Now, for me, I think The Promise was my biggest positive from the year. Just a bit ahead of Korra because of what this series means for Avatar going forward. Why I think it has more potential than Korra, I suppose, is just not necessarily because of the story. That said, the story is, I really like the story and what they do, but what the potential that comics have to improve Avatar, because we can't get every story in animation. We can't get a show to show us everything in the Avatar world. At this stage, the Avatar world is so vast and so big that there needs to be some other way they can explore it without having like development times of years. In that, with comics, there's a few months of planning, and then like artists can work on multiple stuff at the time. Like writers can write stuff multiple times. So you can have a lot of comics coming out during the year compared to maybe only having one season of a show coming out during the year. So comics are a more continuous way to kind of improve the Avatar universe, while the shows kind of hit for a while, nothing, hit for a while, nothing. Comics are continuous. So I think The Promise, as like a contained series, a contained story, worked so well because it showed, like, rather than just being a mini kind of story like in The Lost Adventures, it was just 3 full books, you know, like 200 plus pages of comic story telling one story, and it worked so well. I'm very positive about the comics because I honestly don't have that many negatives. I know there are a lot of fans out there who don't seem to like the comics, and you know, I have to say I find it very hard to see where the negativity is coming from. Even if they like explain it, I just don't see it. Like that's just the way I feel about the comics. And yeah, but anyway, there's a lot of potential with the comics, and with The Promise itself, I also was talking more about comics in general as opposed to just the story. I really like The Promise. It was really important for Zuko and Aang to show that they're not just fully developed characters at the end of Avatar The Last Airbender, the show, that they still have a ways to go even though the war is over. They have to develop as leaders. They're still both very young. They have all this kind of friendship and kind of teen drama going on, like with relationships and stuff. So they have to like all this stuff happening at the same time as dealing with the kind of end of the war and that very complex situation of what do you do with towns that were kind of taken over because of the war? Do you just give them back to where they were and maybe displace a lot of people, ruin families and stuff like that, or do you just leave it and justify part of war? That kind of going through the whole thing, and I thought it was very well explored. A lot of people say that they were mainly aimed at kids, but there was a lot of kind of deep stuff like that throughout it. Stuff like Corey and Katara and like what they were kind of talking about in terms of splitting up families and stuff like that. It was very kind of deep and mature, and I really enjoyed it. So like Gurira's art, I think, is the biggest positive that everyone has from the comics. But Gene Yang's writing, I was pretty impressed with it, and you know, I think Dark Horse were impressed with the sales enough that, you know, they made the Promise hardcover that's coming out next year. So the comic series, The Promise, and I suppose Avatar comics in general getting their first main big story, that's one of my biggest positives from the year. In terms of like other positives, I suppose I'll cover fandom stuff in a minute, but I suppose the other main thing would be Coronation, I think, is the only other thing that really came out. And the positive, this is kind of a dual one, it's like it's positive and negative. it was great when they were actually posting stuff, and like while Korra was airing, and the lead up to Korra, and that was great. And like the contests, I suppose, were great at the start, but the negatives kind of came in with when they just stopped once Korra stopped airing, and it just disappeared like Coronation. They posted the odd bit of news very late after everyone else got it, and just like I think it's going to lead into one of my big negatives, but basically, where has Coronation been the past 6 or so months is my biggest issue with Coronation. And then the way the contests work themselves were basically a popularity contest. Who had the most Facebook friends? Who had the most followers on Twitter? Those were the people who could spread their links around. The people who could spend all day posting their links on all these sites to get them clicked and stuff like that. I was incredibly lucky to win the posters that I did. And I think much of that is just because I'm one of the main people on Avatar The Last Airbender Online, so I got like clicks that way. So I was incredibly lucky to get that, but from other people like who maybe aren't that big on fan sites, they had no chance, and there wasn't... It all could have been solved with having that popularity thing, but also having some kind of randomly chosen people. You enter a contest, that way everyone has an equal chance. So I think Coronation was a bit mismanaged, and you know, it all depends on when it comes back now, when they're going to start posting Book 2 concept stuff. If it comes back very soon, it'll be a positive. If it doesn't, it's going to be a huge negative. Like, Coronation has so much potential, nothing really happening, but it's a positive when it works, I think. I think Nick on their website, with the core stuff they put out, that Welcome to Republic City game was really good, and the way they kind of kept people's excitement in it by gradually releasing the different areas. That was brilliant, and I really hope they kind of continue that style of a game in the seasons to come. Like, that's a perfect way to kind of preview the whole series, just on this thing, like, oh, look at this area, look at this character, we have a brief bio on them, I can't wait to see them in the show. Welcome to Republic City was brilliant, and some of the other games were quite fun, but I think that Welcome to Republic City game was brilliant. So I'll move into more fandom related stuff now, and like stuff with the site, AvatarTheLastAirbender.online.com. I suppose just in general, a big positive from this year was just community and stuff like that. Avatar The Last Airbender Online, I suppose, the fandom in general, but our site is a very positive place. It's one of the best communities out there, and just especially while Korra was airing, it was just so much fun. People were so excited. There wasn't the same level of negativity as elsewhere. We could discuss the parts that we honestly felt weren't the best without it coming across as overly negative. We kept the positivity, kept it being a fan site, which I think is often lost on places like Tumblr when it just gets overly critical and stuff like that. You have to remember that, like, if you're a fan, you know, it's a bit annoying if people just start being overly negative about it when you're in the fandom to kind of be with other people who are positive about something you like. That's the main thing to say there. So the community of Avatar: The Last Airbender Online was great. I'll briefly bring up a negative now, and that's just that, to basically give context to this positive. And that is, the site was hit, the Avatar: The Last Airbender Online.com was hit by a huge hacker attack in about end of July that basically wiped out 3 months of activity on the site. The 3 months when the site was most active, so while Korra was airing. So all that stuff is basically gone right now. Don't have that. You can't go back and look at it. There's just 3 months missing on the forum because of that hacker attack. It's all there from before that, but all the best kind of content that we had on the site, the most posts we've ever had in like a 3 month period, gone. But how the community reacted to that was fantastic, because everyone was just so supportive of, I suppose, myself and Jordan, as we were trying to get the news posts back up and just, I suppose, stabilize the site after this whole thing, or get stuff organized again, because it was a huge kind of negative. I'll talk more about that in the negatives at the end, like the details of that hack attack, but the reaction of the community after that was brilliant. The members who were kind of lost because the 3 members who signed up within those 3 months that were missing were gone as well. They were just happy to sign back up and be involved in the community because they liked it so much during the time they were there, and they were happy to sign up again. I was able to give the points back because the way the points system on the site works, and that was very simple. And I suppose as well, myself and Jordan were very busy during this time, kind of behind the scenes on the staff, so we weren't getting to interact as much on the forum. So just the way like other members, not even staff members, not even moderators, were just like when someone posted like oh, I signed up for the site, my account is now gone, what do I do? They were the ones to kind of reply to them saying, yeah, just PM Airspeed or Admin Jordash to get your points back, and they'll sort it out. Just to see how positive everyone was about getting the community back up, because they themselves like it so much, and that was just brilliant to see. Continuing on community, I'll use this basically to represent the podcast, the Avatar Online podcast, and the Avatar podcast I do. This is obviously the headset I use to record it, microphone, the earphones. These earphones on it don't work, so I just use headphones. But anyway, the mic is really good. So yeah, the Avatar Online podcast was something. When I first joined the site in 2010, a few months after it started, it was something I always wanted to do, get an Avatar podcast up and running, and it didn't really happen until about February, March, earlier in 2012. I tried and failed a couple of times to get it going. Eventually it happened because Callum, who obviously I've known from the Legend of Korra Facebook page, and he then joined the site and become more active there. He was the first one to kind of like really go like, yeah, I want to do this with you, and we eventually kind of got that going after a while, the organising a time and stuff like that. And it was one of those things where, like, if you were to say to me now, Morgan, by the start of 2013 you will have recorded about 55 podcasts, and you'll have a big viewership and stuff like that, and you'll have talked to like 5 or 6, like 10 members of like the community and stuff like that. I would say that's not going to happen to this podcast I have planned. But that's how it happened. It started off with just myself and Callum on that episode 1, talking about I think it was The Promise Part 1 on episode 1, but I'm probably mistaken there. And just the fact that like we were so nervous doing that first one. I suppose Callum was a bit more nervous than I was. I suppose I had a bit more experience doing this YouTube stuff beforehand, so I knew kind of I could speak for like large periods of time about Avatar, but it was mainly developing that hosting skill. Like, I have to give my own opinions on it, but also bring other people into it. That's the kind of skill I had to develop early on in the podcast. Luckily, it came very easily to me, and it's just very natural when I'm on one of those podcasts now. And then, like, gradually from there, you know, Rich came on board, then Kelly came on board. We now have kind of Peter on board, and throughout there we have other guest hosts on board, and other people want to come on as well. So it's just this really big positive from the podcast, and especially for me, like, not many people around where I live like Avatar. Pretty much the only people I know here that like Avatar are my 2 sisters, and even they don't like it that much that I could like discuss it in depth with them. So the podcast was the first time pretty much I got to talk about Avatar with a fellow fan, and the fact that now every week I get to do it is just brilliant, which is also, I think, one of the big accomplishments. Sorry about that, my the battery on my camera just died, I had to go charge it. So what was I saying last? I believe I was talking about the podcast. So what I wanted to say was I think it was a huge achievement, I think, for I suppose myself and as well as the rest of the podcast crew, to be able to, from that first episode, basically put at least one episode out weekly from then until the end of the year. That was just, I suppose that was the main goal. That was the one, like, if at all possible, we'd love to do that. Just get a podcast out every week, make it weekly. Because there are a few other Avatar podcasts out there, but they're not really that regular. So for us to be that like weekly podcast, having news, being up to date with all that stuff, while also having good discussions on other stuff, was really what we wanted to do. So, yep, the podcast was a huge thing. In terms of other positives, I suppose the final one really is more site stuff. And that's just some stuff that we did. Like after we kind of got back to normal after the side hack, stuff like the Avatar games section. Obviously, we had the podcast section, and then along with them, the fan art section and the fan fiction section took off a bit more. And yeah, the game section is just brilliant. You know, we had just the Avatar trivia thread and the picture trivia thread going for ages, but to have them in their own section and like being the kind of big threads in that section as opposed to random trivia thread and then otherwise kind of show related forum, that was really good. And it really kind of took off with all these other ideas people had. And then the fan art section becoming more popular, in part I think because we started the fan art contest towards the end of the year. That got people thinking like, hey, I like that theme, I'm gonna do this one piece of art, and then people like that art and they then create their own thread in the fan art section and realize that, hey, I'm actually a really good Avatar artist. I think that happened with a lot of people on the site. In terms of fan fiction, we got more fan fictions posted than like ever before because of I think a lot of people just new people joining the site, and there being new people to do fan fictions. So that was cool, and the site just really has grown like tremendously over the past year. And especially the Facebook pages that kind of the site helps to run. Obviously, they own our own page, AvatarLastAirbenderOnline.com, Facebook page. That like got over 10,000 likes, which for a fan site page that really just focuses on page stuff is brilliant. And then our Korra page, Journey of Korra, basically an Avatar, the most popular non-official Legend of Korra page, 30, I think it's close to 40,000 likes on Facebook already. So that's a huge for us as well, and especially like that. Those Facebook pages really help again. I think make the site popular, especially the news posts, and especially when we got like we're one of the first places to post some of this news, like the May comic. Like we got loads and loads of like likes, comments, and stuff like that. So just to see the site growing so much and being one of the top fan sites was brilliant. And that's pretty much all the positives from the year. And in that way, it was a good year, but there were some pretty big negatives from the year also. And I think the biggest among them was just that once Korra finished airing, once Endgame aired, not much else happened. You know, we had that Making of a Legend thing, and while some of it was good and it was a great way to kind of rerun the show on Nicktoons, the debut it there wasn't really that much to them. Like, they advertised it so horribly. They really made it think like that. Oh wait, Michael Bryan going to basically be commentating for the whole episode. That's brilliant. When in fact it was only about 3 minutes an episode. That was really bad advertising, almost false advertising. And you know, it was great just to see the show rerunning again. But when Korra Making of a Legend ended, Korra news just stopped. And I think that is the biggest problem from the year. With Korra Book 1, you had the fandom. You had the fandom excited about Avatar once again. The fandom was at the largest it's been since the end of Avatar The Last Airbender, Book 3. And then nothing. That was just shocking. Like, there was no, as far as I know, there was no reruns of the show after Making of a Legend. The show is not yet available on DVD yet. There's no merchandise out at mass market yet, only on shopnick.com. Even then, like, poster and t-shirts are really the only main bits that you'd want. So they didn't build upon anything there. Like, coming back to Coronation again, they could have kept people up to date with Book 2 there, but no, they barely posted about San Diego Comic-Con 2012. It was left up to the fan sites to do all of that. And I think the biggest problem is that, like, outside of the hardcore fandom who's on these fan sites, looking at all these Facebook pages, not that many casual fans know that Korra is actually getting a book 2, 3, and 4. The amount of times on Facebook pages that I'm asked, like, is Korra going to be getting a second season? And I have to just go, yeah, it's actually confirmed for 3 more seasons, 40 more episodes to see. People just are shocked at this, and you link them to news and they're like, whoa, I missed out on so much because I didn't see it like officially from Nick. And that's a big issue. Like, they need to really work on that, like make it clear that Korra's coming back for another season, uh, and stuff like that. So that was a huge negative from the year. It just drained so much excitement from the show. Everyone was excited by the end of Korra, but since Korra was a fairly short show, and then 6 months of nothing, it just made it so frustrating. And just for there to be no information about book two since San Diego Comic Con, so 6 months, very little information. It's just, it kind of made you wonder, like, why? Like, why aren't you keeping the fans up to date? Do you not want people to be really excited about book two or something like that? And it is a negative for like a show to go 6 months with no information. In terms of other negatives, I suppose from the year would be, I suppose that just the fandom was a bit more negative than I remember. Like, obviously this is the first year the fandom's been kind of full on back. We've had lots of new content come out with Korra and then the comics. Just to see how negative and aggressive things are in the fandom in some parts, especially Tumblr, it's really frustrating, and I kind of have really tried to stay away from it for the most part because it's kind of diminishing a lot of my own excitement for stuff. Like, I'm a fan, I review things objectively. Like, if there's something I don't like, I mention it. But for the most part, I do like the stuff because, not just because I'm a fan, I'm like biased or anything like that. I feel like I have to like everything. No, because I honestly think The Promise is a good book. I said my complaints about it. Korra, I honestly think it's a good show. I've said my complaints, but so many people on Tumblr are just like, Korra's a really bad show. It doesn't deserve to win any awards because it has these little things at the end. That's what's annoying. Um, people can't people can't see beyond some minor negatives, despite the fact that so much of the show was good. And yeah, so the fandom being a bit more negative was a point during the year, but thankfully the site Avatar: Lost Airbender Online is for the most part positive, and I just kind of stick to there because for me that's kind of like the fandom that I know. Like, if the people on the site like it, I know that okay, I kind of I'm like have a similar opinion to them, and I'm not kind of crazy for liking it or anything like that. So that's that. Other negatives from the year, I suppose. Going on to that site hack, what happened? A bit more in depth on what happened with that was that, I think it was around June or July. I can't remember the exact date, but basically Korra had just aired, and stuff like that. So we were all kind of like excited, like speculating on book two. And then I kind of wake up one morning and immediately turn on my laptop, like I do kind of most mornings, to check the site immediately straight away. And I just kind of noticed that, like, oh, the site's taking a long time to load. And then when it did load, I'm just like, wait, I remember writing that post up like 3-4 months ago. And I refreshed the page a few times, and I kept coming back up with the same stuff, and I'm just like, what's going on here? And then like a few people like posted updates like, what's wrong with the site? Like, it's like post from 3-4 months ago, and I just kind of went straight to my emails to see, did Jordan, like, did something happen with the site? Was he updating it or something like that? So I didn't see any email from him. I emailed Jordan, and almost immediately I got back a response like, and like to see kind of Jordan kind of like a kind of more serious tone to this post. It's just like something really bad has happened to the site, and he explained like what happened. Like basically the last 3 months of content, pretty much from almost immediately when Korra started to the end. So we lost all Korra content on the forums from when it was airing. So basically the time the site was most active, we lost all that stuff, all the episode discussions and stuff like that, all the news posts from that time, which there was like the previous 2 years in the site, there was probably the same amount of content that there had been in those 3 months of Korra. That gives you an idea of how many posts were gone, basically. And we just kind of, I just got the sense that we're both sitting there on our computers, like, not even kind of like talking to each other, just on email, just kind of like, whoa, this is a really big problem with the site. Like, are we even going to be able to fix this? Was the kind of thing. I then kind of like emailed back, like, okay, we really need to do something straight away so this doesn't take forever. So we both just decided, yeah, we're going to do this. And it was like, what can we get back? Is there anything we can get back? What is gone forever? What can't be taken back? And Jordan basically replied that the forum stuff is all gone. All the posts are gone, but through caches, Google caches of the site, you can get back the news posts, basically. So that was kind of fine. Like, okay, we'll at least get back the news posts, and then we'll deal with the members for the last 3 months that went missing after that. So basically, from then, like early morning, I woke up at like 7 o'clock that morning. So like I had a lot of time that day to kind of just do this, because I wasn't really busy doing anything else. So Jordan just explained to me, here's the process for basically adding the post back. You're going to copy paste this in this type of format on the thread. And basically what we did was just from Google caches, we copy and pasted all the news posts, made a new post out of them. So if you actually look on the site, there's like 100 and something posts in June, and like they're all older posts, but just to have them on the site. That took ages because there was just so many posts, and like you had to make sure there was a picture selected so it just didn't come up as blank. And after we got through all that, then we put up the post about like explaining basically what happened to the site, and that newer members for the last 3 months can just re-sign up using the same details as before, and if you ask, we'll add your points back. That's basically what the post said. And then the comments started coming in like, oh, that's really bad to hear from the members who had been there before that, who were defective. Then since the comments on the post are open to everyone, you don't have to be a member, we had all these people coming back, kind of wondering, what do I do? And just like explaining like, okay, just sign back up like you did the first time. Same stuff, and then I'll add your points back once your account is made again. And that kept happening. I got PMs gradually over the next few weeks, and I was adding people back, and it was just great to see. So the positives coming in there. Great to see, like as I mentioned, like how positive the community was about getting the site back up and running properly. As I said, the people helping everyone else, telling people to PM me if they're gonna have their points back, and then just stuff like the people who weren't even like members on the site, like the people who would just come for news and maybe post once or twice in the comments who weren't even members, them posting about that. And then even more than that, like the people who clearly kind of came to the site to view the news but never even posting to do that. Just the fact that the fandom kind of banded together around the fact that, well, we're in the Avatar fandom and one of the fan sites for our fandom was attacked. That's just something, if you're an Avatar fan, you kind of know, like, why would someone do that? That's terrible, and like you want to support that. So we got a lot of support after that, but the negative is just that for some reason the site was attacked. We lost the best 3 months we kind of have had on the site. Thankfully we got, after that, some of the best months we had on the site then, but it's still kind of disappointing, I suppose, for the history of the site that we lost that content, that kind of like episode discussions as they were happening. Thankfully, the podcast, through the episode discussions, core roundtables, we have some of that discussion. We have like those theories there. The podcast wasn't really affected that much. That was great. Having that there, so we didn't lose everything. So, it wasn't a complete disaster. That was good to know. But let's continue on negatives from the year. I'm kind of struggling for negatives after that. Really, it's just kind of like the sheer amount of waiting for stuff and like that we had to do. Just like if December didn't have the amount of news that it had about comics and all that preview stuff coming out, I'd be much more negative in this video, just because like Avatar, like Korra is Nick's best viewed show basically. Turtles is doing well, but in terms of like staying like high up in the rankings, Korra kind of is having like the best ratings that Nick's had in a while, so it is probably like their most successful show. They probably won't say that because Turtles has more episodes in its opening season, but I think as it goes on, Korra is basically going to be one of Nick's most popular shows, and you just get the sense that they're not quite treating it like it is their best show. which is odd. Like, they should keep people informed to keep their viewership up, and they're not quite doing that. So that's kind of the negatives from the year, pretty much for me. Another positive I maybe forgot to mention is just that our community. I think the best way to describe how good the community is just that I'm the head moderator on Avatar: The Last Airbender Online.com, and in 2012 I did not once have to issue anyone a warning, a formal warning or anything on the site. I never even had to like give people like not so much a formal warning, but say like, you know, don't do this, don't argue. Like, there was no incident this year really. The only moderation I've had to do is maybe like new members kind of doing some stuff like kind of abusing the point system to like go up the points, posting a lot of crazy updates, just kind of like they didn't mean to, but they ended up spamming the forum, so just kind of advising them, and like that's not kind of how it works here. Just post like proper content, you know, to gain your points up and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like assisting new members was the moderation stuff I did, and then just organising forum stuff, like if there's any duplicate threads or posts. Never had to really do anything this year on the site in terms of like full-on moderating in terms of like our kind of ban process. Like, we've never banned anyone. It's so in that terms it was good, and that's pretty much the year in review. It was excellent, but towards the end of the year it just kind of teetered out because there was very little to kind of keep people excited, keep people just like, yes, Korra, it's awesome. Thankfully, community has kept our site together for the most part. Obviously more people will come back once more news and like core content starts to come out, but that's the main problem. I think that like the fandom would be crazy if they actually put out news. In terms of 2013, like what we had to look forward to, 2012 did a great job of setting up 2013 basically with Korra Book 1 having potential, the comic showing how good Avatar comics can be, and also like we have previews for, you know, we're getting a deluxe edition basically of the Promise series early in February. The Search, you know, Ursa's mom's going to be entered next year, which is a huge thing. Korra Book 2, Spirits, everyone wants to know about the Spirit stuff. The free comic book day stuff, Korra novels, SDCC 2013, we're probably going to find out about Book 3. It's a really, really exciting year next year. I think this has been the best year in terms of Avatar since 2008, but I think 2013 is just going to eclipse that because it's going to take a lot of what 2012 did and just improve upon it. The series, The Search is going to improve upon the Promise because it's a direct continuation. Book 2 of Korra, and obviously continuing on Korra, and it's just stuff like that's going great. The podcast is going to just go from strength to strength now that we've had basically a year behind us. The Korra roundtables, I think once they start coming out again, we're going to get a ton of listeners, and I hope you all will listen to those when they come out. So that's basically this video. It's gone on a long time, but there's a lot to talk about this year in terms of Avatar. And I really want to know in the comments, like, how you felt the year went. Do you like agree with some of my positives, agree with some of my negatives and stuff like that? Or do you have anything I didn't mention? Please comment below. And then the final thing I'm going to say is that the next video is just going to be basically what my plan is for 2013 in terms of my YouTube channel. The next video I'm just going to basically explain what series I'm going to kind of keep going, what videos I'm going to be doing, and maybe some stuff that I won't be doing. Just that's what I'm going to talk about in the next video, so that'll be out in a few days, and thank you for watching this one, and bye.